Hello. So we're outside again. I got my little muff diver. I've moved it down very slightly, so we'll see if that picks up my dulcet tones. What do I do with this? I'm going to rest you on there because I thought I'd have a Slurpee and a chat, really. Lovely. So this video is about 63 Up, really, the programme that I said I was going to watch, and I did watch it and thoroughly enjoyed it. Mostly it was a little bit sad in places, very, very thought-provoking, as to me, as they all are. By all I mean obviously the 7 Up, the 14, the 21, 28, etc. Every single time I watch it, I am full of thoughts, absolutely full. The sad parts obviously was Nick, bless him. He's been diagnosed with cancer. I was quite surprised how old he looks, but then he's very ill. He was very slim, hunched over, very bald, bless him. It makes you wonder, doesn't it, really, about what people say, you know, that smoking will kill you, smoking gives you cancer and all the rest of it. And out of all of the kids, even some of the heavy smokers, the only one that got cancer so far is Nick, who was a clean living country boy, born and brought up on a farm in a little village in the countryside, very fit and active all of his life, and he's got cancer. So it just makes you think, really. But yeah, so that was very, very sad, actually. It was sad. Obviously, I mentioned about Lynn Johnson, who died. That was sad. It was also sad to hear the backstory from her husband and her 2 children, that basically she was pushing one of her little grandchildren on a swing. The swing hit her arm, and the arm got bruised, and the bruise made some sort of a clot, went up to her brain, and it killed her. She already had a problem in her brain with swollen veins, I believe it was, I can't remember. But whatever, that was very sad. It's nice to see some of them doing well, doing kind of what they wanted to do. Somebody like John, very upper class sort of upbringing and what have you. And even when he was 7, he said, I'm going to go to Dragon School and then Cambridge and then you know, all the rest of it. The only thing he didn't do was end his life in politics, which is what he said when he was a kid, 14 I believe. But very successful in his own career. I think he was a barrister or a QC or whatever. But all in all, yeah, a very good programme. The one that I'm connected with most is Neil, and I've always been connected with Neil, and probably that's why I watched the programme. I think if there was no Neil, I don't know whether I would even bother watching it. You know, back then, I would now, but back then when I was a kid, I fell in love with Neil. Neil had more spirit than anybody else. When he was 7, he was throwing his arms up in the air, he was running, jumping, skipping along. Him and Tony, I suppose, was the children that were most active, or appeared to be most active. But definitely out of Tony and Neil, Neil was the happier child. Full of life, full of, oh, you know, when I get married, this will happen and that will happen. I want to be a coach driver. I want to, you know, he was going on and on and on, and a very interesting, articulate little boy. I particularly liked when he was 7. They didn't play it this time, they didn't show it. But I remember this from years and years ago. They asked him, what does he think about coloured people? And he said, I don't mind anybody. He said, but coloured people is stupid. It sounds like they've got purple feet and yellow hair and green eyes. Bless him. He was only 7, and I thought that was really sweet, you know. But I think Neil himself is a very sweet-natured man. He's very troubled, but I think he's a very sweet-natured man. This time, at 63, he mentioned the word depression. That's the first time. Before then, he's mentioned mental illness. He's also mentions my nervous complaints, he called it. and he kind of attributes a lot of that to his parents and his upbringing and things like that. And sadly, he's made a victim out of himself. He feels that he's had a bad deal in life, and he has had a bad deal. Some of it his own making. But his mum and dad have now died. They left him some money, so he's bought a little place in France. He actually didn't choose the place, oddly. He got married, a very short marriage, 4 years, and the wife chose the place for him. And he spends his time between where he lives, which is Cumbria in England, and France. Little tiny place, miles away from nowhere. It probably does suit him, actually. If Neil's away from people, then I think he functions better. But he's got this inner drive, and I think this is the thing to do with the parents. He wants them to be proud of him. That's why he went into politics and into the church, I think. I think he wanted a sense of belonging, for one, but I think he wanted them to think, okay, he has made it, and now we're proud of him finally, because his parents didn't really speak to him, by all accounts. And he said even in the last few years, his dad would just sit there silent, not speaking, and his mum would talk, but mainly to herself. How sad is that? When he used to go and visit, Dad would remain silent and Mum would just talk, but only to herself. So you can understand some of that has made him the way he is. You know, mental illness he would have got anyway, I'm sure, but obviously that didn't help. So that's really, really sad. Makes you reflect on your own life, obviously, as I always do when I watch it. I think about myself and what have you, and I always come to the conclusion, and this will sound awful, I always come to the conclusion about the pointlessness of life. There is no point to it, you know, and that worries me, troubles me sometimes. It worries me. What is the point of life? Yeah, okay. My life, for instance, you know, I've created and I've cultivated as much as possible, as much time for myself in my life, as much freedom, as much out of the system as possible. All of my life, I've always done that. And that's made me happier. That's how I want to be. I want to be away from whatever you want to call it, society or people or the system. I want to step away from that. And I've always done that to a degree, and that's made me happy. But even that is pointless. Everything is pointless. Everything is pointless. You know, how many nights did Neil go to bed freezing cold? Did he cry himself to sleep? Did he worry that he was going completely off his rocker? I'm sure he did. He had no food, no company, nobody in the world. Awful. Not just the odd night, for years and years, that's how he was. Through all that, somehow he came through, and he lived his life, and he does whatever he does, you know, which is fantastic. But there's still a lot of pointlessness to it. Why put yourself through all of that when ultimately we're going to die? That's what I'm getting at, you know. You look at my old mum, she struggled all her life. She had 3 jobs when I was a kid, just to give us a few pence and things like that. She was ill for many, many, many years. You know, I remember having a heart attack when I was just 16, you know. She was very ill in lots of ways for so long. She got to 81, and I'm amazed that she did, really, bless her. My father was a bastard to her, used to beat her up and all sorts, you know. She put up with that until we were semi-grown. I was 12. And she left home and what have you, you know. I mean, that must have been awful for her. And she came back a few years later when he'd gone, and all of that, she did all of that for us kids, you know. Gave her life away, really, for us kids. I suppose that was my mum's life, was to give it away, you know. But again, it's all of what she went through. Earache, toothache. She had pyorrhea of the gums and had them all taken out 16, 17 years of age. Lots of pain, lots of hassle, and especially at that age, you know, trying to be pretty for boys, or whatever, you know. She did all of that, and at the end of it, died. You know, this is what I keep saying about the pointlessness of life. There is no point to it. There is no point. I don't understand the point of life anyway. At least I can say that. You know, yes, I get a lot of enjoyment out of life. I get a lot of beauty out of life. I love doing my art. I love reading and spending time with my little dog. Things like that. And I do say that life is good. It is good. You know, like today is a good day. We've had a good bimble. We're having a Slurpee and a little chat now. I started a piece of art last night. I've just done a little bit more. So on the whole, for me, life is good, and good does get better. You can build on good. That's what I mean by that. But ultimately, that's all my life will ever be, is just good. It won't be amazing. It won't be great. It won't be wonderful. For a few minutes here, there and everywhere, it's great, it's wonderful at times, you know, but ultimately it's good. Sometimes it's a bit sad. Sometimes it's difficult to manage, difficult to deal with. And then I'll die, and that'll be that. And you think, well, what a waste of a life, what pointless, you know. I look at life sometimes like the penny arcades, or 2p, 10p, probably a quid now, down at the seaside. You know, you lob your pound in and it pushes more coins to the front, and eventually the coins fall off, you know. And if my little finger, that was my mum, and I'm somewhere behind her, and we were going along being pushed forward and pushed forward and pushed forward, and eventually my mum was pushed off, and then her brothers and sisters are pushed off, and now I'm getting to the edge, and one day I'll be pushed off, and my nephews will be behind me, and their children, and they'll be pushed off. What is the fucking point? What is the point of life? You know, that's what it makes me think sometimes, you know. But I mean, saying that, I'm reasonably happy most of the time with certain things about my life, I suppose. Would it have been any different had I got married, or had kids, or I don't know. Who knows, you know. Some of the, the premise of the film really was, give me a child until they're 7 and I'll show you the man. And they asked everybody that, and everybody said, yes, I agree. I agree that an element of me was definitely back there in that child. The only person that didn't say that was Neil. And he just didn't answer it. Not that he couldn't, he's super intelligent, Neil. But he just wouldn't answer it, and he said, I think you and your audience are a better judge than me. He says that because of lots of different reasons, but Neil doesn't have a television. He said in an interview years ago that he refused to watch himself on there, and doesn't participate apart from once every 7 years, 10 minutes or so, he has a chat. That's all, you know. But he refuses to watch himself and to think things through. However, I did read an interview with him a little while ago, and he said that he feels like a complete failure in life. And that's sad, isn't it, to feel like that? I don't feel like that. I don't feel like I'm a failure. I've said before in a video that success, whatever that is, but I think success is happiness. I don't think probably there is no success, is there? It's just happiness, really. You know, you say, I want to be successful in my career. Well, what that means is that you want to feel happy and content in the level that you've achieved, or you want some good money, or whatever, you know. I want to make my parents proud of me. You know, I want to be success for them. No, you want to be happy for yourself, so they're happy for you. So it's all about happiness. So I think Neil is saying that he hasn't had much happiness in his life, really. You know, certainly not a failure. Without Neil, I wouldn't have gone down the route that I went. The psychology, the teaching, things like that. I would not have went into mental health at all. I wouldn't have bothered, you know. I can remember, I think I was 16, first time I was aware of 7-Up, and I watched it and I thought, wow, you know. And then 7 years later, I watched it and they were 28. So you watch all the back stuff as well, the 7, the 14, the 21 and the 28, and you can see this change in people, but it was Neil that stood out. And he was so alive and so vibrant and so beautiful at 7. And I thought, wow, if only I could take him back, or somebody could take him back to that 7-year-old's thoughts and that mind, that way of being. Even just fleetingly, he was 28, he was homeless, he was rocking like that. Awful to see him like that. But if he could have stepped back into those shoes of that 7-year-old boy, just for an hour a day, something like that, if there was a way of doing that, and is there a way? That's what I was thinking at sort of 16. I thought, there must be a way, is there a way? What, you know, and I started to study sort of brain injury, things that just affect the brain. And then that leads on to anxiety and depression, and also autism, which is a fascinating subject, along with that Asperger's or PTSD or whatever, you know. So I started to really study, not at 16, I started to look into it a little bit at 16, and it was always in me. And then 7 years later, it was back to Neil and my thoughts about Neil and my thoughts about myself, working in a warehouse, living in a shitty place. I thought, I need to be in the country, I need to be teaching, or at least researching. And it wasn't until I was about 30, you know, that I'd started to really in-depth educate myself, because I left school with no education, or no qualifications, I should say. So I had to redo everything, you know, and I did do, and you know, I'm quite proud of myself, I suppose, for achieving what I've achieved, but not really for myself, for other people, because I do know there's a number of people walking this planet who are much happier because of me, because of the things I've done and taught and things like that, and the impact that I've had on their life. And you can make a difference, you know, if you go into the right career path, the right jobs, you know, the right way of being, the Buddhist say right path, right thought, right action, and that's right job as well, you know, because you couldn't be a Buddhist and work in a slaughterhouse, for instance, you know. And I was always looking for this right path, the right way of being, and certainly working in the mental health field is it's done me proud, really, you know, and I'm happy and proud to have done that. So perhaps my pointlessness of life is that although I may feel that life is pointless, and I do, we can have a huge impact on other people. And sometimes it's just the odd word, isn't it? Or just a smile. When you feel really, really down and somebody says, how are you? It's another thing that Neil said. You know, he said when he was married, he said to his wife, he mentioned low mood, and then he said about depression, but he meant depression. He said his low mood hasn't helped, and he spoke to his wife and he said, look, when I get really low, speak to me or ask me, am I okay, and then leave it alone, just let me be. And I fully understand that. I really appreciate where he was coming with that. I've got dysthymia, so forever I've got this depression. Sometimes I get a depression on top of that, which I've had recently. I haven't got over it. It's not something that you can just sort of get over, but I am learning to manage my way through it now, and I'm getting to a nice place mostly. You know, I still have down times. Always will, I suppose. I don't know how this lot of depression on top of my dysthymia, I don't know how that's going to affect me in the long term, whether it's going to come back, whether I'm still going to continue, hopefully, baby steps. I'm just going up and up and up all the time, you know, so that's what I hope anyway. But yeah, there's a lot in that Neil said. You know, ask me once, then leave me alone. Bless him. Wonderful man. But you know, ultimately, I think they're all doing pretty good. Nick, sadly, with his health isn't good, and as I say, Lynn died. Jackie's not too great on her legs. She got osteoarthritis, bless her. I know about that. yeah, all in all, I've enjoyed it. It made me a bit melancholy at times, a bit sad, but I'm very, very pleased that some of them have really done what they wanted to do, and they seem to have had a reasonably happy life. Lots of ups and downs, as we all have, you know. Okay, just my little few thoughts really on 63 Up. I've noticed already it's on YouTube, at least the first 2 series. It was on this week, whenever you're going to get this I don't know, but it was on Tuesday the 4th, Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday, and I've noticed that Tuesdays and Wednesdays, episode 1 and 2, they're already on YouTube. Did I say eBay a minute ago? I don't know what I said. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't, who knows. So the old series, just typing up series if you are interested, and you find the whole lot, 7 Up, 21, 28, you know, it's all on there, and personally I think it's absolutely fascinating. I really do. Pleased that I've watched it. Very, very pleased. I said before, it's like reading my favourite book, and you've got 7 years before you can turn the next page, and that's what I've got now, is another 7 years. Will they do another one? Partly I think they won't. The crew and the director's Michael Apted, whatever his name is, quite a famous film director, Gorillas in the Mist he did, and a few others I don't know, I ain't seen any of them, but anyway, he's been doing this forevermore, but he's knocking on, he's about 80 now. So will he be about in 7 years, or will he be able to do it? Will the children, the 63-year-old children, will they be about in 7 years? Will they want to do it in 7 years? Will the crew that's always worked with Michael, will they be about? Because one of those died as well, just I think last month. So got a feeling that's it. Just a feeling. Which in a way is a shame, but things have got to come to their natural end, and wouldn't it be awful to continue to watch it just to tick off who's dead? Do you know what I mean? That would be awful, wouldn't it? Okay, I'm going to go in. That was Slurpee, it was so lovely. I'm going to make another one. Have a great weekend, everybody. Enjoy yourselves much as you can. I'll just check. Yeah, I did. That's right. I'm just checking this little button says camera on and off, and the other day I made a video and it was off, so you won't get to see that. Anyway, take care then. Be well. Ta-ra.